Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to show you a little bit about compounding charges on sales orders. Now, before we begin, I do want to point out that this feature only works with auto charges. This does not work if you're just adding charges onto your sales order manually. I believe this is one of the most common errors that you could have when using this feature, so I wanted that called out right away. All right, so diving right in. First thing you need to do is you need to make sure that you have the following feature enabled within feature management. And that is called sequence and compound for customer charges. You can see that it was enabled in my environment, and this needs to be turned on. Secondly, from your accounts receivable parameters within the pricing section, you want to make sure that you have this value base for being set up to be sum including charge amounts. What this will do is it will say we're either putting these charges only on the sales order lines, or do we want to have the lines and other charges as well? If you set it up like this will function just the way as D365 did prior to this feature becoming available. So I'm setting it up to sum include charge amounts. Okay, and now let's dive into the auto charge. So I'm going to go under AR, under charges setup, and go to auto charges. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. And I will pick customer flower shop 1. And then let's look at how we can use auto charges. Now, compounding of auto charges is useful, especially if you have customers where you charge a fuel surcharge or you do any commodity-based pricing. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my first sequence is going to be a flat freight charge that I'm charging this customer $100 every time. Now note the compound is off for this piece. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to charge a fuel surcharge. And I'm going to, now compounding only works if your category is percent. It will not work for any other type of calculation methodology. So here I'm going to choose my fuel surcharge and I'm going to choose 2%. The way this works is that anytime you have something set to compound, it's going to say, what is my base for this calculation? So prior to the release of this feature, what this would mean is that there is a 2% charge added on top of my sales order lines. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to look for any line where the sequence is equal to or less than the sequence that I have specified here. So in this case, I have 1. So the base is going to be not only the sales order line, but also any charge lines with a lower sequence. So here we have a $100 freight charge. So let's go ahead and open up a sales order. And I'm going to create my sales order here. And I will choose warehouse 11. And I'm going to do an item here. And to make our math a little bit easier, I'm going to make my selling price $1,000. If I look under sell and maintain charges, you'll see my 2 lines will have defaulted in. There's my freight and my fuel surcharge. Now, in the old world, this would have meant that we have $1,000 from our sales order, $100 from my freight, and 2% of 1,000, which is 20. So the total of this order would have been $1,120. But now the 2% is going to be not only on the 1,000 that I'm selling, but also on the $100 of freight. So instead, it will be 1,100 and another $22. And you can see this right here within my sales order tab under totals. You'll see that my charges are 122 for a total invoice amount of 1,122. And so that is the power of the compounding charges. Now we'll get a little bit more, we'll add a little bit more complexity. So what I can do in here is I can go in and I can say that I want to have and actually let me make my sequence and my position. Let's make my sequence here 3, or my position 3. And I'm going to make my position here 2, and I'm going to make my sequence 1. This position field is important. The position field is a determination of what order these freights will be calculated in. So this one, I'm going to leave the compound off. And I'll say I have a handling, but I'm going to add a % of 5. What this means is that first we will evaluate that we have a $100 fixed charge. So $1,000 for my sale, a $100 freight charge. Then I'm going to have a 5% handling charge because that's position number 2. And because this is not set to compound, it will only be on the line, meaning it's going to be 5% of $100, or sorry, of $1,000, which is another 50. And in fact, to keep track of this, I'm going to put together a quick Excel file. So my sales order line is 1,000. My position 1 is freight of $100. My position 2 is a non-compounding handling charge of 5%. So that is 1,000 times 0.05. Now my position 3 is my fuel surcharge. It has a sequence of 2 and it's compounding, meaning I want to add up not only my lines, but everything with a charge lower than it, with a sequence lower than it. So that means that this is going to be 1,000 plus 100 plus my handling, which was $50. And all of that times 2%. And so if I look at my sum, my total order should now be 1,173. And if I go back and I look at my sales order total, indeed, we have 173 in charges and 1173 of total. And so that is the power of the compounding charges. Now, remember what I said right up front. You cannot add more compounding here. So while I would have no problem with doing 4 and 4 and adding another fuel surcharge, and I'm going to change this to percent, even though I've checked this compounding box here, and I'm going to say 10%. Now, if this was working, this would be 10% of everything before that. So going back to my example here, if I add in a position 4, it would be realistically just the sum of all of this times 10%. And so my total of my order would have been $12.90. However, because this did not come from the auto charge, Dynamics is going to ignore the other 3 charges and only do it against the line. So instead of 117.3, it's just 10% of 1,000. And so what my actual total will be, this plus this. Ooh. 1273. So if I go back to my totals now, there you have my 1273. So that is, if you're ever wondering why the math doesn't make sense, it's because only things that default from the auto charge matter. So let's go ahead and delete that line. And this time, let's go ahead and add that into my auto charge. So I'll go back to my auto charges. And let's add in, so let's make it look just like we saw earlier. So I'm going to make my sequence of this one, I'm going to make 3. This one I'm going to make 2. This is going to be my handling. And I said this was 5%. And then I'm going to have a sequence of 4, which is compounding. I just have to change this to percent. And this will be a secondary fuel surcharge. And I'll make this 10%. Let's go ahead and save that. And then let's go ahead and create a new sales order. And once again, I'm going to add my same item, and I'm going to make it worth $1,000. And if we look at my maintain charges, there are my 4 lines. And in this case, my position and sequence here is 4. And if I look at my totals, there is my 1290.3. And if I go over here, 1290.3. So just always bear that in mind. Hopefully you found this video useful. Thank you very much.